Hello and welcome to Walk the Pod, your daily walking show where I take my podcast for a walk because I don't have a dog. You are very welcome along. This is episode 6, series 59, which we're discussing the theme of vulnerability. And today I am borrowing a phrase from Manoush Zamarody's podcast ZigZag, which I highly recommend to you. And that is the neutral zone. Vulnerability and the neutral zone. Welcome to Walk the Pod.
Hello, Rachel. I'm currently sitting in my back garden, having been on a walk, which feels like I'm cheating a little bit, but I'll go with it. On the subject of vulnerability, I think the series is really interesting, and I feel incredibly vulnerable at the moment. I've just left my job, as you know, after 20 years, and I am about to set up on my own as a new company, and I don't really know what I'm doing, but I think in that there is something quite powerful about the fact that it is in the moments where you don't quite know what you're doing and you don't quite have a fully structured idea. Those are the moments in which you can hopefully at least come up with something creative and exciting to fill the void and, most importantly, to bring some money in. Anyway, very much enjoying the series. Very much enjoying having my cup of tea in the back garden rather than being in the office, and very much enjoying going for a walk occasionally. I only apologise for the sound of the roadworks happening behind my house, because otherwise it would have been a beautiful sounding birds singing, only the occasional sound of an aeroplane going over, but hey, this is what it is. All right, thanks, and I'm sure I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you, James. In Manchester in the north of England, or thereabouts. Manchester might not quite be right. Thank you, James. Your thoughts there on how vulnerable it is to be starting a new company and not working in another organisation that is much bigger and capable of sustaining you after 20 years. And particularly your comments about staying in the area where you don't quite know what you're doing reminded me of the neutral zone, a concept coined by Manoush Zamarody in the ZigZag podcast. I also want to congratulate you and thank you for your voice note, which was very open in its vulnerability, because it's not easy to admit that we are not quite sure what we're doing. I think it's one thing to admit that we're scared and we don't quite know what the future holds, but quite another to say, I don't know what I'm doing. But if more people said, I don't know what I'm doing, when they did, when they really don't, we would have a lot less of the problems caused by people pretending to know what they're doing when they don't know what they're doing and messing things up. So, highly salute you and not knowing what you're doing. And being able to say that you don't know is a place of vulnerability, but also the only way that we can find out what the answer to all of our questions is. We have to admit that we don't know in order to ask questions. And that sometimes is seen as a sign of weakness, but it shouldn't be, honestly. Anyway, but to give a bit more about the neutral zone, it is precisely what James was talking about, and that is when we are faced with a big change or something that's entirely out of our control, and when that presents itself with nervousness and worry about the future, but also opportunity, staying in a zone where we don't actually know what we're going to do intentionally and just exploring the space rather than panicking and rushing towards the first thing we can see that looks tangible, is the way to end up with something more creative, more interesting, and a better fit for us than any other course of action, and the course of action that must raise its head most clearly to those freshly out of a job is to apply for a new job, any job, in order to start being in that safe place again. But by rushing towards something, we may end up with something that doesn't fit us terribly well, isn't really the best next step in our career. Maybe a worse position in terms of terms and conditions than we would like, or that we had before. And so just being able to hold space for thinking things through and working out what works for us is very powerful. Now, unfortunately, this is where I do want to point out that one does have to be able to keep a roof over our head while we're doing this, because it's one thing to do it with a little bit of financial backing, but with no financial backing, it becomes more and more important to grab the first thing that comes along. And consequently, at this time when a lot of emerging technology is disrupting the workplace, it would be lovely if there was some support for people who find themselves freshly displaced from what they used to do by that, in the same way that there was support when pandemic closed workplaces a few years ago. Sorry, I should have said the pandemic, not pandemic. Otherwise it sounds like I'm talking about the board game Pandemic, which nobody wants to play anymore for some reason. The pandemic closed all the workplaces, and the governments around the world had to sort of bring out furlough schemes to protect people. I wonder whether the general overhaul that might be coming will also result in some kind of scheme like that. Or maybe people will just take it on board, and it's silly to draw comparisons between the two. Perhaps it's fear-mongering to draw comparisons between the two, so I apologise. Maybe I'm going too far. Anyway, I think my point is, if we all had universal basic income, we could be much more creative. And I don't think anybody knows what that would look like or how wonderful that would be, because I don't think there's a single country that has it yet. But my goodness, wouldn't it be amazing for everybody to be able to do whatever they creatively felt moved to do every day? Would be a world of artists within 6 months. What can I see directly in front of me? Well, I'm in the park behind the hospital, recording the 6th episode of Series 59 of Walk the Pod, and still scanning the ground for the wedding ring that we understand is in the park somewhere. I've already looked for it last week, didn't find it. I think the chances of finding it are decreasing by the minute. But I'm looking anyway, because that's how my brain works. If you put a poster on a tree saying you've lost something, I will spend the next hour looking for it. I can't help myself. Anyway, the grass is quite long on this little mound of earth here. It's been left a little bit longer than usual, which is nice and good for wildlife. Quite a few leaves and sycamore helicopters on the floor. And a sort of brown dog frolicking in the distance. Rach, how are you on year 5 of Walk the Pod and you still can't be more specific than brown dog? I don't know. It's a superpower that I have, not to be able to identify dogs properly at all. Anyway, it's a brown dog. I tell you what, why don't I just say some breeds of dogs, and you can then imagine a brown dog with more specificity, and I can know that whilst it's not the same dog, because I can't remember what the breed of the dog is, you've got a nice specific image in your brain. So it's a brown Cocker Spaniel, and it's hunting all around the park also looking for this wedding ring. One of us might find it. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, there's a poster on a tree in the park which says lost wedding ring, cash reward, and a phone number. And I'm looking for it, not to get the cash reward, more just to reunite somebody with the wedding ring, because I mean that's important. But I haven't found it so far. Thank you for walking with me, dear friends. It's been a delight to stretch my legs with you this lunchtime. Still very interested to know what vulnerability you have experienced in your life. Please go to walkthepod.com and leave me a voice note if you'd like to. You can do so anonymously. You can also leave me a message, but say this is not for putting in the podcast, Rach, if you want, so I can just have it on background. Whatever you feel most comfortable. And if you are happier typing than speaking into a microphone, you can also email walkthepod@gmail.com. Take care of your beautiful mind, and I'll be back with episode 7 and more voice notes on vulnerability tomorrow.